Hello, and thanks for tuning in. If you enjoy stories about strength, self-respect, and the quiet triumph of moving on, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss what's next. Today's story is about a woman named Eris. Eris Thorne had always believed their love was a fortress, built brick by brick over 10 years of shared laughter, quiet mornings, and the kind of profound, unspoken understanding she thought was indestructible. At 38, the head of pediatric surgery at one of Seattle's most prestigious hospitals, she saw the world in terms of systems, structures, and foundations. Her marriage to Maya Vance was, in her mind, the bedrock of her entire life, the one constant in a world of medical emergencies and life-or-death decisions. She thought what they had was permanent, load-bearing, and true. Until a rainy Tuesday evening in November, when a single, wistful sentence, uttered into the quiet space between them, brought the entire structure crashing down around her ears. Eris was a woman who could hold a child's life in her hands for 12 consecutive hours, her focus absolute, her calm unwavering. She was precise, devoted, and completely, utterly unaware that the person sleeping beside her every night had been quietly dismantling their foundation for months, leaving her standing on hollow ground. The day had been grueling, a complex separation of conjoined twins that had stretched from dawn until well past dusk. Eris came home smelling of antiseptic soap, her muscles aching with a familiar, satisfying exhaustion. She found Maya curled on their dove-gray sofa, a cashmere throw pooled around her, staring into the middle distance as the Seattle rain slicked the large windows of their meticulously designed craftsman home overlooking Lake Union. The house itself was a testament to their shared history, every piece of furniture, every piece of art a story. Maya, a freelance graphic designer with a celebrated eye for aesthetics, had orchestrated its beauty, while Eris's steady, significant income had made it all possible. It was a partnership, Eris had always thought, in every sense of the word. She dropped her keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, the clatter of familiar announcement of her return. Maya didn't turn. That was the first prickle of unease, a deviation from the pattern. Normally, Maya would look up, her face breaking into that easy, brilliant smile that had first captivated Eris a decade ago in a crowded coffee shop. "Long day?" Maya asked, her voice soft, almost muffled by the room's quiet. "The longest," Eris replied, shrugging off her coat. She walked over and leaned down to kiss Maya's temple. The skin was cool, distant. For the past 6 months, Maya had been wrapped in this strange, melancholic gauze. She'd become obsessed with a new pottery class, spending long evenings and entire weekends at the studio. She'd started talking in vague, therapeutic terms about finding her own space and reconnecting with her core self. Eris, accustomed to the pressures of high-stakes careers, had been patient, supportive. She assumed it was a creative slump, a pre-40th birthday malaise that required understanding, not scrutiny. She had encouraged the pottery classes, praised the lopsided, earth-toned bowls that now cluttered their shelves, and gave Maya the space she seemed to crave, never imagining that space was being filled by something other than clay and introspection. She had believed her wife was navigating a personal journey. She had not realized she was planning an exit. Eris made tea, the ritual a comfort after the sterile precision of the operating room. She brought 2 mugs into the living room and sat in the armchair opposite Maya, the soft glow of a lamp creating an island of warmth in the darkening room. For a few moments, they sat in silence, a comfortable quiet that had been their signature. But lately, the silence felt different. It was no longer a space of shared peace, but a void, heavy with unsaid things. Eris watched her wife, really watched her, and saw the subtle shifts she had previously dismissed. The way Maya's thumb constantly worried the edge of her phone, the slight, almost imperceptible frown that had taken up permanent residence on her brow. "I was thinking about Portland today," Maya said suddenly, her eyes still fixed on the rain-streaked glass. "Oh? Thinking of a weekend trip? We could. I have a clear weekend in a couple of weeks," Eris offered immediately, her problem-solver instincts kicking in. A change of scenery would be good for her. Maya gave a small, sad shake of her head. "No. Not really. Just thinking about when I lived there. Before I met you. A cold knot began to form in Eris's stomach, a feeling she recognized from the moment a routine procedure suddenly went wrong. It was a clinical, chilling premonition of disaster. That was a long time ago, she said carefully, keeping her voice even. A lifetime, Maya agreed, a strange, hollow nostalgia in her tone. She finally turned to look at Eris, her expression unreadable. And then she said the words. The 9 words that would act as a scalpel, cleanly and irrevocably severing their shared past from any possible future. I miss her. I miss how she loved me. The sentence hung in the air, shimmering with a terrible power. Her. The word was a detonation. Eris knew exactly who she was. Chloe. The college girlfriend, the passionate, tumultuous, artist in a garret romance that Maya sometimes spoke of with a kind of dramatic, literary flair, always framed as the beautiful chaos before she found her true, stable home with Eris. Eris had never been threatened by this ghost. She was the solid reality, the 10-year marriage, the shared home, the future. Chloe was a prologue. But in that moment, Eris understood. Chloe was not a ghost, she was a benchmark. And Eris, apparently, had failed to measure up. The cold knot in her stomach didn't just tighten, it turned to ice. The sensation was so intensely physical that for a second, she thought she might be sick. The room seemed to tilt, the warm lamplight turning harsh and interrogatory. Every memory of the past 6 months replayed in her mind, but this time, the lens was different. The pottery classes, the late nights, the emotional distance, the constant, secretive texting she'd chosen to ignore, it wasn't a creative slump. It was an affair. An emotional one, maybe a physical one, it didn't matter. The betrayal was in the longing. The betrayal was in sitting in their beautiful home, built on Eris's grueling hours and unwavering devotion, and mourning a love that wasn't theirs. Eris was a surgeon. When she identified a sickness, a malignancy, she did not watch it, she did not coddle it, she did not hope it would get better on its own. She cut it out. Swiftly, cleanly, and completely. She looked at the woman on her sofa, the woman who had just confessed to carrying a torch for another while living inside the fortress of Eris's love, and she felt a profound, almost arctic clarity descend upon her. There was no anger yet, no screaming, no tears. That would come later, in the sterile privacy of her own solitude. Right now, there was only the diagnosis and the immediate, necessary procedure. She placed her untouched mug of tea on the coaster beside her with a steady hand. The small click of ceramic on wood sounded like a gavel. Maya was watching her, a flicker of fear in her eyes now, as if she was just realizing the destructive power of the words she had so carelessly released. She opened her mouth to speak, likely to launch into one of her signature backtracking monologues, full of phrases like, "I didn't mean it like that," or "It's more complicated," or "I'm just processing my journey." Eris did not give her the chance. She met her wife's gaze, her own eyes clear and devoid of the warmth that had lived there for a decade. She delivered her response with the calm, quiet finality of a terminal diagnosis. "Then go find her." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a decade shattering into a million irreparable pieces. Maya stared, her mouth slightly agape, the color draining from her face. She had expected a fight, tears, a dramatic scene. She had expected Eris to plead, to ask what she could do to fix things, to try to win her back. Maya had, Eris realized with a surge of bitter contempt, wanted to be fought for. She had wanted to be the tragic heroine at the center of a drama, torn between two loves. She had not expected this. She had not expected an immediate, unconditional release. She had not expected the door to be opened for her, not just unlocked, but flung wide. "Eris, wait. That's not." "I can explain," Maya stammered, the carefully constructed facade of melancholic artist crumbling to reveal the panicked, selfish woman beneath. "There's nothing to explain, Maya," Eris said, her voice still unnervingly calm. "You've explained everything perfectly. You miss how she loved you. That implies that the way I love you is insufficient. It implies you've been comparing us." And it implies that you want something I cannot, and now will not, give you. So, I am giving you my permission. In fact, I am insisting. Go. Find her. See if the memory lives up to the reality. Eris stood up. Her body felt strangely light, as if a great weight she hadn't even realized she was carrying had just been lifted. The weight of denial. The weight of trying to hold together something that was already broken. You should pack a bag, she said, her voice flat, emotionless. You can stay with a friend for tonight. We can arrange for you to get the rest of your things later. Pack a bag? Eris, you're being ridiculous. We can't just throw away 10 years over one stupid sentence. Maya was on her feet now, her voice rising with a frantic edge. This was not how her script was supposed to go. The sentence didn't end our marriage, Maya. It just announced the time of death, Eris replied, turning to walk towards their bedroom. The marriage has been over for a while. You've just been the only one who knew. She didn't wait for a response. She walked into their shared bedroom, the sanctuary that now felt like a crime scene, and methodically began to separate her life from Maya's. She pulled a suitcase from the top of the closet and began filling it with Maya's clothes, her movements efficient and detached. She was triaging. This was a catastrophic injury to her life, and the first step was to stop the bleeding. Maya followed her, a torrent of excuses and justifications pouring from her lips. It was just a feeling. It meant nothing. She was just confused. She felt trapped. She hadn't been feeling like herself. She had been meaning to talk to Eris about couples therapy. It was a textbook performance of a person caught in a lie they never expected to have to defend. Eris tuned it out. It was just noise. The irrelevant data that could cloud a surgeon's judgment. When the suitcase was packed, she zipped it and placed it by the bedroom door. She turned to face her wife, whose face was now slick with tears Eris knew were for herself, not for them. I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight, Eris said. I need you to be gone by the time I get back from work tomorrow. Leave your key on the counter. I'll be in touch through my lawyer. Your lawyer. Maya's voice was a shocked whisper. The word hung between them, brutal and final. Eris, please. Don't do this. I love you. A single, harsh laugh escaped Eris's lips. It was a sound devoid of humor. No, you don't. You love the comfort I provide. You love this house. You love the security that allows you to spend your days in a pottery studio indulging your romantic fantasies about a past lover. The woman you love is in Portland. I have given you my blessing to go find her. You should be thanking me. Without another word, Eris grabbed her purse and her car keys and walked out of the bedroom, out of the living room, and out of the front door of the beautiful house that no longer felt like her home. She didn't look back. As she drove through the rainy Seattle night, the windshield wipers beating a frantic, rhythmic pulse, the clinical calm finally began to crack. A single tear traced a hot path down her cold cheek. And then another. But underneath the grief, a new feeling was taking root, a fierce, unyielding sense of self-respect. She had not begged. She had not pleaded. She had seen the sickness for what it was, and she had made the cut. The days that followed were a study in brutal efficiency. Eris contacted Eleanor Vance, the most feared divorce attorney in Seattle, a woman known for her surgical precision in dismantling marital assets. She moved into a furnished corporate apartment downtown with a stunning view of Elliott Bay, a place with no memories and no ghosts. She informed her closest friends with a brief, factual text. Maya and I have separated. The marriage is over. I'm okay, but I'd appreciate some space for a few days. The locks on the house were changed the day after Maya moved her things out. The fortress was secured. Maya, as predicted, tried every tactic. There were dozens of texts, cycling through desperate apologies, angry accusations, blame-shifting, and nostalgic reminiscences. She sent long, rambling emails invoking therapy speak about her attachment issues and her fear of engulfment, as if a pop psychology diagnosis could excuse a decade of lies by omission. Eris read none of them. She created a filter that sent all of Maya's communications directly to a folder for her lawyer to review. She was excising the cancer, and that meant no contact. Their mutual friends, who had all witnessed Maya's slow, self-involved withdrawal and Eris's steadfast, patient support, quietly and decisively sided with Eris. Invitations to Maya dried up. Her social world, so carefully curated, began to shrink. True to Eris's final directive, Maya did, in fact, go to Portland. Eris learned this through a mutual acquaintance who reported it with a mixture of pity and contempt. Maya had packed her car and driven south, filled with a cinematic fantasy of being welcomed into the arms of her long-lost love. The woman who had loved her right, the reality, as it so often is, was a bitter disappointment. Chloe, the artist, was no longer a struggling romantic in a garret. She was a 37-year-old woman, a co-owner of a successful gallery, and had been in a committed relationship for the past 5 years. She was polite but bewildered by Maya's sudden appearance and her dramatic, tearful confession of undying nostalgia. The grand romantic reunion was a 20-minute, deeply awkward coffee where Chloe gently but firmly told Maya she was happily in love with someone else and that their college romance was something best left in the past. The fantasy shattered against the hard wall of reality. Maya returned to Seattle, not to a triumphant new beginning, but to a friend's spare room, a dwindling freelance career, and the deafening silence of a life she had torched for a ghost. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. Eris, with Eleanor's expert guidance, had been ruthless. She kept the house, which she promptly put on the market, severing the last physical tie to her old life. The proceeds were divided, but the emotional capital was all hers. She moved into a permanent residence, a sleek, minimalist condo with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out at the mountains and the water. A place that was entirely her own. She filled it not with Maya's curated aesthetic, but with things that brought her a sense of calm and strength. She worked, she excelled, and in the quiet moments, she grieved. She mourned the 10 years, not for the loss of Maya, but for the loss of the woman she had been, the trusting, optimistic woman who believed in forever. A year after that fateful rainy night, Eris was having dinner on the patio of a restaurant in Fremont. It was a warm summer evening, and the air was alive with the sounds of the city. She was with a woman named Sasha, an architect she'd met at a hospital fundraiser. Sasha was brilliant, funny, and refreshingly direct. There were no games, no carefully constructed melancholies. Their conversation was about a new surgical technique Eris was pioneering and a sustainable building project Sasha was designing. It was a conversation between two equals, two adults grounded in their own lives. As Eris laughed at something Sasha said, she felt a sense of peace so profound it almost startled her. It was the feeling of solid ground beneath her feet. Across the street, exiting a bookstore, she saw her. Maya looked smaller, diminished. Her clothes were less stylish, her hair less artfully messy. She was alone. Their eyes met across the expanse of the street. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Eris saw a flash of panic, then regret, then a deep, aching loneliness in Maya's eyes. Maya gave a small, hesitant wave. Eris did not wave back. She did not smile. She simply held her gaze for a second, a calm, neutral acknowledgement of a person she used to know. Then, she turned her attention back to Sasha, back to her dinner, back to her life. She picked up the thread of their conversation, leaving the ghost of her past on the other side of the street. She had gone through the fire of betrayal and emerged not hardened, but refined. She knew her own worth, and she would never again allow anyone to make her feel like a consolation prize. The fortress had fallen, but in its place, she had built something far better, a home within herself, with foundations that no one but she could ever shake. She had found her own way to be loved, starting with herself. Thank you for listening. We hope this story resonated with you. If it did, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that celebrates resilience and the power of walking away. We'll see you in the next one.